Hello, welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you are here. It's the full moon in Cancer, so this forecast is for the Cancer suns, moons, rising signs. You have progressions in Cancer, and the U.S. natal chart is a Cancer sun. So I would say that this forecast is actually applicable to a larger social context, especially in terms of the destiny of the United States as a country. So, Cancer people, as with all full moons, we're coming to a culmination point, and we're really just going to look at the main astrological themes. You know, this is just a check-in. We're going to look at the full moon leading up to the end of the lunar cycle. The 21st of January is when the sun moves into Aquarius, and then right after that, we have a new moon in Aquarius. And so we're just going to see, you know, what this particular part of the cycle has in store for the Cancer person, because not only is the full moon in your first house, and so you become kind of like this, you know, example and, you know, this representative in some ways of this lunar cycle for all of us, right? Because the moon is, you know, allowing you to very much connect subjectively to the energies of the full moon. You are a moon-ruled person, so this is really very powerful for you. So the general themes here, Cancer, are that it's pretty clear. Let's back up a little bit in kind of a general feel. And I'm curious to see, you know, let us know in the comments if you're experiencing this too, if you have anything to add to this general theme here. Now, people often will be like, there's been a shift, there's been a shift, there's been a shift. Or there's been a shifting in timelines. It almost becomes a cliche because it's overused so much just to, like, I don't even know what anymore. But this, it's pretty clear through my own experiences and readings, through all of my sessions this week, leading up to today, which is the 6th. And our private Telegram group for the Starseed Fellowship, the chatter in there, the things people are sharing with each other, it's very apparent at this point that something actually has shifted in the collective. And I believe that, and it's my assertion that the new moon in Capricorn was, I think humanity said no more, basically. We set an intention to grow personally in relation to this decision that no more were we going to waste our valuable resources and the fruits of our labors, whatever they are, in order to support a bid for power that is, well, just hubris, in my opinion. And there is a bid for power, and there is this like false holographic timeline that will continue to be propped up and energetically and ritually invested in. And you'll see that there's going to be stuff that happens in the next 2 weeks, probably, most likely, that are going to provide opportunities to either manipulate something based on what is coming, or I would say to really do the deepest analysis that you can imagine about what is on its way, right? Being able to read the tea leaves means that you can see the energetic structure of the materium. And when you have Pluto and the Sun together, at that point, which is going to be happening during this last 2 weeks, it's a powerful time, and you can deeply get into some analysis and have this opportunity to assess and analyze yourself, but also the opportunity to really manipulate people. And the Cancer person in general, right? Not anybody necessarily here, and not necessarily even the U.S. as an entity. The potential for attempting to utilize this ability, this power, this sight, right? This ability to pick up on the energetic structure of the whole could very easily be used against people to manipulate relationships. And Cancer, it is all about relationships for you. I mean, that's really what this comes down to. As the materium and as the old guard is being destroyed, dismantled, falling away in order to bring about the metamorphosis into a new set of structures, the Cancer person they are that industrious boss, goal-oriented provider. They are that person in their relationship. So as that changes, so does the nature of the Cancer relationships. And as that changes, the subjective experience of the Cancer person also changes. And so there is big change. There's a big door opening. Many people are having all kinds of experiences where that false timeline is being directly experienced in different ways, but not actually part of the reality now, which I think is phenomenal. So Cancer, are you with this full moon, how does it feel to release yourself from the bondage of those old systems? What is releasing within you that you have full exposure of and feeling and of ability to tap into in terms of your identity, your subjective experience, and who you are in this world? How do you feel about that? What is your intuitive sense of that? And it won't need to be that intuitive. It's a full moon in your sign, and you are a moon ruled person. So the germination of who you are, I think, will be that much more powerful as you identify with the experience of no more. Like, I am taking the shackles off, just like in the devil card in the tarot, how the man and the woman are loosely shackled. It's just, and that is a Capricorn card. It's just a matter of releasing yourself from that bondage. And the bondage comes not from the materium or from nature or even institutions. It comes from and the fact that they're crystallized. That's the thing about Capricorn. It's like crystallized purpose and meaning into something substantial that provides for all of us. So are you going to throw those shackles off, right? Are you going to release yourself and your soul and your subjective identity and who you are from all of those systems that have become distorted, right? They've become perverted. They have been used in ways that are not in alignment with nature or the wisdom of our natural, organic self. And for those who have been ready and waiting and wanting and intending for this, it's beautiful. It's almost blissful, right? Like, people are reporting that they just feel like new people. Some people are having experiences where they are coming way more into their true nature, like walk-in experiences, or just having this sense of fullness and bliss as they're going around. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be everybody, but it's about releasing. Now, of course, releasing ourselves from the bondage of these distorted systems, right? And taking the initiative and feeling the release as a result of it, okay? Now, so that's going to be the essence of the full moon. And so when we get to the full moon, it either shows us what has culminated successfully in the first half of the cycle, or shows us what cannot continue. So that's also going to be part of the experience of what within ourselves cannot continue. So Cancer, I would say that you will get lots of opportunity over the next 2 weeks to really address that consciously and with intention as the moon moves through the bottom, as you see, of the Cancer rising chart, which doesn't have much going on. Really, it's just the South Node in your 5th house, and then also Black Moon Lilith, or the lunar apogee, also in Cancer right now. So the moon is at its furthest away as well from us. And so that might also give a sense of distance of where you are going, okay? Now, there are other things here that are going to encourage that distancing or that sense of behind the scenes, or it's not fully provided for us yet, okay? Now, that's Mars in the 12th house in Gemini, still retrograde. It stations direct on the 12th of January, and we're going to look at that time period of like the 10th, 11th, and 12th, because it's pretty important. And then things really kind of calm down from there. But Mercury, which rules that house, by the way, for the Cancer rising people, the Gemini house, Mercury is also retrograde and is going to conjunct with the Sun today after this full moon. So there's still more discovery, more auditing, more mental focus and review on who you've been in relationship, the structures that have defined you in relationship, and how that's changing. Now, Mars may move direct, but the fact that Mercury is going to stay retrograde, even though that's happening, I would say take advantage of this behind the scenes action of Mars, right? Kind of get out of your own way. That was something I talked about with someone yesterday who actually is a Cancer rising person after a session. And that was something that we both came to, this person get out in their own way. So looking at this now, when Mars stations direct, it'll be a lot of behind the scenes, in the unseen, in the spiritual aspect, in the astral, maybe in the dreams, maybe more in just your imagination. But Mars will be starting to work on these structures karmically that are going to be wrapped up and come to their end, basically. So, but this is something that is not going to be on the surface necessarily. It's something that is going to be addressed in the spiritual realm for you. So it is important to get out of your own way, especially in those areas. Not to say you can't be conscious of what's happening there, but with Mars in the 12th, I mean, you really are putting your action and output in areas that are away from everyone and even away from your conscious social experience. So allow that to be the case and kind of let that impulsive and instinctual energy that is influenced by Archangel Michael and because of this conjunction with Aldebaran to be the channel of divine power, to tap into your channel of divine power and allow that to and that channel, right, that energy of Michael to guide what is otherwise meant to be an instinctual action and not something that you're overthinking, okay? But it's behind the scenes. There are things that are still being worked through and worked on in your soul right now. And that's going to be the case, pretty much as Mars finishes its transit through Gemini and then, will come into Cancer this spring. So that's one thing, allowing Mercury in its retrograde to do the auditing in terms of who you've been in relationships. So these things can actually support each other. The other thing that really stands out to me for the Cancer people is that, it is people, right? It is the 11th house, right? Your social networks, your peers, your associations, your collective, your community, right? The place that you realize your voice is part of, the social organism. This is truly the enriched soil and medium of growth that the Cancer person actually embeds themselves into. Now, of course, the North Node or the ascending node of the moon is pulling all of us in this direction of Taurus and specifically pulling you into this direction in terms of your larger social networks and your friend groups, your social media networks, and really just society as a collective consciousness. The issue I think Cancer people have been really having is the fact that Uranus has been, has been in Taurus for quite a while now, and in its retrograde, it's really just shifting the landscape of what that is. And yes, there is this sense of really wanting to break loose, to get into a higher consciousness in terms of your social groups, your peoples, basically. And the shifting of the landscape is still happening kind of internally right now with Uranus. Now, Uranus is also going to station direct during January as well. So also know that those energies are going to start being directed forward again, based on our perspective, right? They're not actually going backwards. It's all just a matter of perspective. But from our perspective, this energy is going to start moving forward again, but it's not finished with its retrograde. Now, there's trines. There's already been a trine to Uranus. Mercury in its retrograde is going to make a trine, which means it's going to make another. So 2 more trines over to Uranus in this area. And it's really, there's still work that is being done on the self here in order to really align with that higher octave of social network that you can really embed yourself within. And we don't know where we're going. That's the thing. It's like we know that we've been somewhere and what that has entailed, but we don't actually, that information is not really sufficient to confirm where we're going. The good thing about Uranus is that time and that progression is not something that Uranus really needs to worry about. So that's something that I think is going to be more of brought to the awareness in terms of what is being produced for the Cancer person in that 8th house when Venus comes into a square with Uranus, because it'll be a mutual reception. Venus rules Taurus, Uranus rules Aquarius. So normally a fixed square like this would be really, really intense, but we're going to find that it actually is kind of softened. There is a sharing of information in the meeting of those cross purposes that gives a little bit more understanding to what otherwise would be just like, I'm just going to have to like go through this experience and learn something from it. They already know and are familiar with each other. So, and that has a lot to do with the fact that the 8th house is the energy that's produced in relationship, which is very, very visceral. It's very emotional. You get into the feels of what's going on in the 8th house. And the 11th house is really actually the Aquarian house. So, we'll get to that, Cancer. We'll get to that. I want to point out these areas here that are going to be, part of the conversation, especially Mars and Mercury, because they're both still retrograde. And so it is about getting out of your own way. And I would say, especially with this full moon and the rest of this lunar cycle, to really allow yourself to tap into those areas that have to do with you, right? The world around you, your mind and your capacity for discovery and learning and curiosity of your 3rd house, your 4th house, which is, a house you're usually very familiar with, but is really about equity and justice and balance and equilibrium in the home, right? And being a force of reciprocity in terms of your inner life. The moon coming into the 5th house, meeting your south node, and you tap back into that soul power that you're familiar with in terms of your own voice, your own passions, the way that you express yourself individually, and how, focusing on the power that is produced in relationship is where where your joy really comes from. And allowing that momentum to push you into a new social network, basically, and a new society as a whole. And I would say even with the U.S., this is applicable into pushing the country into a place that is into a new place of a new society, a new civilization, a new consciousness, a new resonance of the collective. So let's start going through this just a bit at a time here so we can see. So this is the full moon. And are you going to let go of the relationship or not? Or are you going to hold on so tightly that you actually will use this Plutonian power to manipulate the situation because you're not ready to or want to let go of this relationship to what is already being destroyed and has been, right, in order to transform. So we're going to take this a little bit at a time here throughout the next 2 weeks. So we already see how we're going to have this conjunction with Mercury and the Sun, and this is that cazimi. And Mercury, if you look at it in the actual sky, Mercury is just like a tick north in terms of its declination. I guess you could say north. I'm not even sure if that's in its, it's in its declination. It's just above the Sun. So they're really close to each other. And this, again, this is just kind of, well, do I want to release myself? And I think that's okay. I think that Mercury, giving ourselves the opportunity to really explore and to go back over these structures and how maybe they have led us to feeling this type of bondage might be a good exercise, right? A good aha moment that allows us to be like, okay, well, I don't want to do that again. And when the moon, when Mercury comes into a trine with Uranus also in its retrograde, same place that the Sun did, you'll be like, what am I doing? How am I working with others in this area? Like how, and mentally, right? Again, there's this audit thing going on with Mercury and Capricorn right now that seems really strong. And the connection to Uranus over here is, hey, we still, it's not really settled over here. There's this strong drive for revolution and really tapping into a higher consciousness in terms of a collective. But we don't, we haven't really gotten to the point where things are changing so much that we're getting there yet. And so this trine with Mercury feels to me, for the Cancer person, it's like, hey, using, exercising your mind, basically exercising your mind in this process of discovering who you are, who you've been in relationship, how you possibly could be someone different in the context of these structures changing, and that you may not know exactly where it's going, but you do have the capacity to use your mental faculties in order to exercise and play and just talk to people, maybe have conversations with people that you need to settle some things with, right? You don't know where it's going, but maybe there's a conversation that really needs to happen that is actually karmic in some ways. Or maybe you're just talking to yourself. And I don't mean that in the way that, that they're, and most of us do this anyway, right? What is your inner dialogue saying? How are you using it in some ways? But I would say in terms of relationship, it's going to be in the conversations that you're having. And maybe you're going back over old conversations with people where you're really going to learn a lot about yourself. And it's going to have this stabilizing effect on an area and an energy that is not stable. Even in its retrograde, it's not stable. It is just like everything's shifting around. I don't know what to expect here. I have no idea what the future is going to look like, but at least using your powers of communication and your capacity to mentally engage with your relationships is going to be at least a stabilizing force, okay? And this is still, part of the Mercury retrograde is going to be going on for a minute. So then the moon moves into Leo by the end of the weekend. And this Leo time actually has felt really important just in general. And you can see that the moon is actually in a T-square to her nodes at this time in Leo. So for the Cancer person, their joy is their asset, right? Like your joy is your asset. The world of resource is defined by your passion and by your capacity to express yourself, to be devoted. That's a resource. That is power. That is inherent power. And just like if you look at Cancer as the mother, the resource is the children. So whether it's literal children or it is a sense of playfulness and a sense of innocence and a sense of devoted expression, something that is individual and true to your heart, it's really your heart that is your greatest asset. And so as the moon comes into this and you have a strong sensitivity to those energies of solar vitality and your own passions, the T-square with her own nodal axis in strangely enough, the 5th house and the 11th house is the challenge to, actually acting in some way to cultivate that society, the way that you have, really found your passion and your joy by really reaching out and extending the hand to those who may not be doing so well, right? This humanitarian aspect along the axis. It's over here in Leo where the moon is drawing the energy of, it is tension, but these T-squares bring us back to here. You can focus here in terms of finding the balance point in these oppositional energies of where you've been and where you're going. There needs to be a space for you to let your consciousness start to play, right? There needs to be, and there needs to be a trust that there is some sort of really stable force there holding the swing that your sense of self is swinging around on, and in a playful way, right? This is how our consciousness starts to spontaneously expand. And so maybe as the soul is really driving you in this direction here of like, I know that I need to water the garden of the social consciousness if I want to grow within it. But there's something down here that's like, you got to give yourself, the ability to tap into that playfulness, your own passion, right? Because that's your real power and your real asset. And this is something that's going to come into more focus as we get more into the Aquarian aspect, because you'll be very drawn into the energies of what you're producing in relationship. So, but right away with this moon going through Leo, just allow yourself the opportunity to tap into your joy as an asset, as a resource, your vitality as a resource, okay? Because I think it's going to be where the door opens for, some more of integrating what it is that have come to fulfillment about you with the full moon. So when we get into Monday and into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's going to get very interesting. So first thing is that Monday we're going to have this trine with Mars and Venus in Aquarius, and it's actually the true Lilith is going to be. The true Lilith is going to be also part of this. So in opposition to Venus and Aquarius, but these two are going to be in an air trine with each other. So this is when we first start really working with the area for the Cancer people of what is it that we are producing energetically. Power is generated through relationship, either any manner of relationship. This is where power is generated. And this has to do with power dynamics. This has to do with actual returns on investments of your wealth. And, this is where you're fruitful and you multiply, is the 8th house, right? It also represents debt. It also represents an imbalance of power. It also represents the areas where we experience betrayal and trust issues. And we may have been traumatized in the 8th house because there's a vulnerability and an intimacy that is experienced in the 8th house, because you're kind of giving yourself over, you're investing yourself into this area. So Venus here in this position in a trine to Mars, still while it's retrograde, is, first of all, it's a trine. So these two aspects of the embodied masculine and feminine are very much supporting each other from these mental, in these mental energies of Aquarius and Gemini. So Venus coming into 8th really gives a lot of meaning and warmth to the idea of sharing. And in Aquarius, it's really easy to be like, yes, it's all, it's an idea. It's an idealized version of sharing where it's like, it's all here for all of us. And Venus here is giving this sense of real value and meaning to the necessity to not only have the symbol of what this means, but to act it out in some way. And it's the connection to Mars, I feel like, is where this sense of embodied sharing, the embodied experience, how it feels in our relationships, how it feels in our projects, how it feels in anything that has value to us from and in terms of society as a whole, and this resonance. It is the acting, what it means to go from a symbol to acting out the vision, like the incorporation of these principles into those of us who actually have become a symbol. And I think that this is something that it can really, that Mars can really put its energy towards this when the time is right. It's like a placeholder. It's like a marker in some ways with this Venus in a trine, because Mars sees like, oh, this is the meaning and the value of becoming more than just a symbol, to actually act this out in my relationships in order to generate something more than what I've put in. And this will be something that Mars, I feel like, when it stations direct, just a number of days after this, is going to really have the eyes on the prize here. So it can get really very hyper focused on the individual aspects with Mars involved, and Venus is like, hey, remember, it's about more than just you, and more than just about your karma. For instance, it is going to have an impact on the power that is generated, and those who are the symbol of where we are going are going to be able to take that energy and actually hold that resonance, right? Like amplify it in some ways. It's pretty exciting. Venus will be opposite Lilith, right? Down here in the second house, and 8 to 9 degrees of Leo actually is more of like blowing glass. And so it pulls the energy down to, don't forget, again, you want to make space, make sure that there's that space within you for the divine intervention to come in and infuse your passion and your vitality. Again, it's your resource. Without this, what are you sharing, right? I think that's something to really consider, because if this is light is going out, what are you sharing necessarily? I feel like this Leo time is something to really take advantage of focusing on right in just the weekend coming into the early week. Now, speaking of Aquarius, what we're going to see here as we come into the 10th, and we have this grand square. And actually, this grand square. So if we even go like an hour, and it's Venus, the nodes of the moon, and Lilith. I'm always trying to multitask and I just can't do it. Okay. Here is, and at the very same time, the moon in Virgo is going to be in a square to Mars in Gemini as well, as you can see here. So this is on Wednesday the 11th. This, as with all grand squares, is something that nobody gets out of, right? This is a main trap. We have been boxed into this situation, and the only way out is through, right? You can bounce from angle to angle to angle, and you will not find your way out. It's really busting through or finding a way to transmute yourself by being the infinite self within this, okay? So this is a fixed grand square across the board, which is a really difficult place for a cardinal energy to be, okay? And this has a lot to, again, this energy is, there's, again, at a soul level for all of us, we are being driven to act in a sign that is has a feminine signature, so there is a sense of receptivity and stillness, and definitely fixed energy, fixed water, fixed earth. But these particular degrees of 10 to 11 have us doing something with that. Well, Venus over here at 10 to 11 degrees of Aquarius, which is an air sign, is masculine. Leo is a fire sign, is masculine. 11 degrees of those signs have us in a state of receiving, of stillness, in that 11 degrees, when normally they would be an output type of energy, or an action type of energy. And so what does this mean? This means that there's going to be this great tension here in terms of where the soul is driving us from and to, and this embodied sense of the value necessary to find some silence, find some stillness within what we are sharing, with those power dynamics, with the energy of our subconscious, even in the 8th house. And allow that silence and that stillness, so that we can be influenced or inspired by the collective consciousness. Allowing the energy of what you are sharing with others to actually inspire you through your relationships, as a way to be, as we are on the cusp of a new cycle. Okay, now, and then you have, of course, Lilith down here in 10 degrees, 10 to 11 degrees of Leo here, is again, is about playing on the swing, right? Remember, the moon was in that position as well, and now it's with Lilith, so it's even deeper, it's even more primal, it's even and will feel like a void. In some ways, it'll feel like there isn't any place for us to just let our consciousness swing around and play. And oftentimes with Lilith, we will find that if you are feeling separate from Source, you're feeling disconnected, you're feeling disempowered, without an awareness of this, we will act out in, or feeling ashamed of our power in this area, we will do things to either suppress it, or we will act out. And I would say that it's going to be, I feel like, in the opposition with Venus herself, that will actually allow that part of ourself that feels disconnected or disempowered to be okay with that space. Because when we allow that space or that void within, this is where the divine flame, this is why Lilith is considered the keeper of the flame, and that divine flame comes in and influences our life. But it's going to be very frustrating, and we're going to want to acknowledge here how much we're not getting out of this, and that we have to just sit with it in the middle, right? And just sit with all the tension here. And again, this is about power and voice for the Cancer person. The other thing too is the moon in Virgo in the 3rd house, right? So the moon's coming into the 3rd house now for you, Cancer, and your sensitivity to pattern recognition, to analysis, right? Especially talking about Virgo, organization of the world around you, how it all is meant to fit together, and really needing a sense of individuality and expression, and uniqueness, really feeling a strong need to express yourself verbally or emotionally, express it in some type of way right in front of you. Again, and Mars is... you could really find, a Mars square the moon just in general is going to, really cause a struggle in terms of our emotions and how they're getting expressed, or the output of our instinct or self-preservation. And I would say there's just a lot of really difficult energy surrounding all of us on the 11th, but Mars is still retrograde. It's stationing. It's going to station like any minute, basically. And so you may feel this strong urge and drive to really express yourself individually, uniqueness, and at the expense actually of what is really going on behind the scenes for you. And that's just, you just don't want this to necessarily, you don't want this like strong drive. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing either. The other thing too with this moon in Virgo is just like, no, I gotta be myself, right? I have to be who I am and present that version of myself in my words, in the communications that I have, in the way that I perceive the world around me, my relationship with the world of concepts and ideas and discovery. It has to be me. And Mars over here is basically like focus back on the bullseye here in your spirit, right? Focus back on this, because this is where things will be so tense that people will just do whatever they can to get themselves out of this box. And I think the moon in Virgo may be part of that too. And to just feel it, right? To just lean into it and know that Mars is still like, we're pulling the bowstring back, right? We're holding it. And we don't want this sense of, really strong drive to just, I gotta be me, and express yourself emotionally in what's right in front of you, and be able to organize it in a certain way is something. Just slow your roll. That's all. That's for all of us. But for you, Cancer, Mars is ready to, like I said, release the bowstring here in the unseen realms, right? These are areas that are not what you are consciously dealing with, but what you are consciously dealing with is down at the bottom here. And I just see a lot of tension here of like, I gotta be me, right? And I gotta do something about this. Just be in the center of this. Just, pop a squat in the middle of all of this and get into your meditation, and find that quiet space, in terms of your relationship with Source, your relationship to your partner, whoever it is, that you're sharing something here. And it's in that relationship that you are actually going to receive some insight into where we are going, okay? But because there is a lot surrounding this. It's just like, hey, you got to do something about this. And then Mars stations direct on the 12th. And the moon is moving through the moon is moving through Virgo in your third house. Mercury is making a connection to the nodes at this point. And I think it's really worth just kind of looking at the general themes here as we go through the rest of this lunar cycle, because the moon's going to come into your fourth house at this point, and our third quarter moon is actually going to be conjunct Arcturus in the fourth house. Let's see what else is going on here too. The sun will come into a sextile with Neptune. Really haven't talked much about Neptune up here in your ninth house. That has made your belief systems are already on a, and purpose and meaning is already characterized by a spiritual, transcendent quality. And with Neptune being here, it's been the case for years that this has been influencing your purpose, right? Something bigger and more transcendent, which is the collective unconscious, has been coming in and infusing your purpose. And so, again, this sense of identifying with the commitment to this process is going to, I think, give a lot of security and a sense of stability and investment into this, into really fulfilling your dharma in this way, right? Everybody kind of comes to realize their limitations, but also what they're here to do. And Neptune is, basically stripping away, not even stripping, just dissolving everything about your purpose and your meaning of all of it to this very basic, very spiritual transcendent meaning here and what your role is within it. And nothing else will really exist because of Neptune being here. It's all the same. And this has a lot to do, again, with committing yourself to the goal, to realize that, society as a whole will always, supports and, it really supports and gives a sense of security to those who actually commit to a transcendent goal. And maybe, I think that in this case, it's really committing to the process that we set up with the new moon, that we are done wasting our energy on the things that, and our own resources on somebody else's bid for power. And we want to commit to a goal that builds humanity in accordance to our natural evolution and our rightful place within this whole sphere. And that, I think, is going to be, what a beautiful opening here of just like, yes, it's just infusing that commitment with purpose in a way that I think is really needed. And this is coming into next weekend. And now you see that the moon is in the 4th house here. And this is where the 3rd quarter moon will be. This is usually when there's some sort of crisis of consciousness, an ideological crisis, something that we have to address very consciously, even though we know all of our kind of impulsive organic energies are on their way out. And we also have a T-square with Venus. There's that mutual reception, Venus and Uranus and Lilith again. She continues to draw the Cancer energy down to the resource and the asset of joy, vitality, creativity, right? And to the point where you may like try to force the issue or just suppress this need because there's a shame about it, or you feel guilty about it. But you have, Venus coming into this square actually at this point with Uranus, and we're braving a storm at this point. That's the thing about Uranus at 14 to 15 degrees Taurus is there's a real storm that is being braved, and this is where our character develops under adversity. And so the shifting landscape is preparing us, and especially for the Cancer person in their social networks and the collective as a whole, that storm is starting to brew again. And the square over to Venus is just like, if I just commit myself fully to this process, like I'm going to be, feel a sense of belonging, right? And a sense that I've, given all of, it's like two lovebirds sitting on a fence. That's actually the Sabian symbol for 14 to 15 degrees of Aquarius. And the idea that the two contrasting parts of yourself, you and society, can be side by side with each other. And the square here is pretty extreme. And while Lilith is just like, hey, don't forget that you are the center of your own experience here, and that you have to actually present yourself to the world here. And that also is going to be, I think, a big part of this T-square, honestly, because it's all, there's a lot of red. There's a lot of red in these charts throughout these 2 weeks. And so I get this is a mutual reception, right? Venus is at home in Taurus. Uranus is at home in Aquarius. And so she is fully aware of the challenges, right, that come along with having to brave the upheaval in a very, when we have social ambition, when we have to face some sort of adverse circumstance or a crisis. She's very aware of how that impacts us in a very real way, and is able to still, I think, maintain this sense of like dignity and almost detachment from the experience, to the point where we can embody a sense of value to sharing that experience as being part of it. Being together. But Lilith again is just like, hey, don't forget about me, because I'll come out anyway. And this has to do with not losing your joy, your vitality as a resource, and its release, its expression as well. That needs to happen as well. And you may find that when you don't cut yourself off from this, but you allow the influence of divinity to come into that experience to infuse your joy, you may find that this T-square isn't actually as awful as it looks at first. But it is going to be difficult when it comes to power. Where is power? Where does it come from? And how does that impact society as a whole, especially the society that you are part of and is now, presenting a crisis moment? So the 15th of January, I think that's something to keep an eye on as well for all of us, really. And as we're finishing out, we're in the third quarter moon now, right? So the moon will have been, here, we'll go back here. The moon will have been in a conjunction directly with Arcturus, as it is in a square to the sun in Capricorn. This is actually the degree that Venus and Mercury were conjunct right after Mercury stationed retrograde, this degree of the reliance on traditions. But what about your sensitivity and your sense of power that comes from being able to see the full and feel and be aware of the full picture, the entire process of life and death? You're gonna, you know what I mean? Because we do rely on these structures and traditions, and when they go away, it can be really scary, or we can feel really unsecure. And the moon down here is actually, well, your personal security actually comes from this Arcturian resonance, which in this moment, especially if you're an Arcturian starseed, you'll really be feeling this moment of seeing the full pattern of all of it in one symbolic reference, right? Looking at the autumn leaf shows the person the entire process of life, death, and rebirth. And that is going to be a challenge at that moment within. But I think that for the Cancer people, you're going to really discover where your power is actually coming from, and your power to find balance and reciprocity and equilibrium and a sense of justice within yourself, right? Because as it changes outside of you, you can't do anything necessarily about that, but you can tap into where your power comes from. And this is going to be this third quarter moon. And it will force everybody to reorganize themselves internally as well. So as we finish up this cycle, this last, we come into the last phase, the moon will meet the south node in your 5th house, and that'll be a nice connection, I think, for the Cancer people to be like, oh yeah, I remember this is where my passion really stems from, and I feel a sense of familiarity with this at a karmic level of really extending the hand and offering assistance to those who are really, really need it. And I think this is going to be good. This is going to be good for the Cancer people to tap back into this, the tail of their dragon, right? What is pushing them towards their own soul's evolution right now. And, we're going to be finishing up this lunar cycle here. The moon will be opposite Mars, Lilith and the nodes, right? These are aspects that are moments in time, right? Moments in time. But then as we get into the balsamic moon, we're going to see here that the moon will meet Mercury on the 20th. Now it is stationed, right? 9 degrees of Capricorn. This is an angel carrying a harp. So again, what is the resonance here? And giving a Well, I would say actually that this Moon Mercury conjunction is actually going to allow for the Cancer person to be personally sensitive to the attunement of the realm of relationship, and allow the mind to really allow the mind to follow that pathway. Like, what is the attunement to the relationship itself, the structure of the Cancer person in relationship. And now that Mercury is going to be moving direct and in a quincunx, at this point with Mars, that is also direct, it's time now to start really having some conversations, to really start learning from the people you're in relationship with, and really applying yourself to those situations based on the resonance of what you have discovered about yourself over those, the next 2 weeks. And then we come into Aquarius season, and then we have a new moon in Aquarius at 1 to 2 degrees of Aquarius here on the 22nd of January, and that's a whole new ball game, my friends. It'll actually be opposite Lilith in Leo as well, so we'll talk more about that as we go along. So Cancer, I'm going to leave it there for you. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so very much. I'm going to be taking the next 10 to 11 days off, so if you're primarily interacting with Catalyst Energies and us here on the video, just know that there's not going to be any content, regular content, for the next week or so. And for those of you part of the Starseed Fellowship and getting your content, that will still be on schedule as usual. So thank you guys so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. I will see you on the other side of so much of all of this. Take care of yourself, Cancer. Have a great full moon, and we'll see you next time.